We're recapping a very busy Wednesday afternoon at the New York Giants as they went through the second day of a voluntary minicamp. And as we heard from General Manager Joe Schoen, I've got all the details for you coming up next on the LockedOn Giants podcast.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. I am Patricia Traina. Happy to have you with us on this Thursday. And as always, folks, thank you so much for making us your first listen of the day, or if watching on YouTube, your first watch of the day. And speaking of YouTube, thank you, everybody. We've hit 3,000 subscribers, only 2,000 more to go before I have that big giveaway that I'm planning for you guys. So let's keep it going, please. The more subscribers, the better. The more, the merrier. And of course, always I'm here for you with your questions, your comments, and not just over on YouTube too, but also whatever audio platform you might be using to get the Locked On Giants podcast. So appreciate you. On today's show, I have some observations, some takeaways from the Wednesday media access. Now, for those who didn't know, the media was granted access to day 2 of the Giants' voluntary mini camp that they're running this week. This is an extra mini camp that the CBA allows all new head coaches to hold. So we did have access to the entire practice. We were able to shoot some film and some stills of most of the practice. We weren't able to shoot of the actual, like 7-on-7, 11-on-11 stuff. But I was able to get some takeaways, and I'll share those with you. And also Joe Schoen, the general manager, spoke to the media. We heard from Brian Daboll. We heard from several players. So I've got all that for you. I wrote everything down, organized it, and that's what I'm going to talk about on today's show. So I hope you enjoy it. And also, as an FYI, if anyone is interested in seeing some of the still shots or some of the video, I'm going to post some of that stuff over on my Instagram account. You can find that at Patty Traina, Pattitraina. So that is my Instagram account. If you would like to go and check that out, I'm going to be probably posting that stuff throughout the day on Thursday. I didn't get a chance to do it Wednesday night because just so much going on and only so many hours in the day. So anyway, let's get right into everything. All right. So overall, I want to talk about the vibe at the Giants. Now, this is the 4th different coaching staff since Tom Coughlin retired after the 2015 season. And each year, I know I've said this. I said, oh, there's a new vibe. There's a new sense of, of urgency, a new sense of energy, and so on and so forth. And the players have said the same thing as well. And, I don't necessarily want to compare Brian Daboll with, Ben McAdoo or Pat Shurmur. I think it's only fair to go back and maybe look at the prior regime, which is Joe Judge's regime. And I felt there was energy, when Joe Judge came in, but there was a bit of a difference. And I want to talk a little bit about that difference here, because this is what I'm picking up from the players that spoke. Brian Daboll is a little bit more relaxed than Joe Judge was. Joe Judge, as nice of a guy as he was, and as I think player friendly as he was, he still had a lot of Bill Belichick, Nick Saban in him, because that's how he was quote unquote raised. So Brian Daboll is more laid back, and Xavier McKinney, who didn't speak to the media, but he did speak to the New York Post, and he told the story of how he was FaceTiming with Brian Daboll, and Daboll was sitting there smoking a cigar, All right. So now can you picture this? You're sitting there, you're talking to your head coach, and he's sitting there, maybe his feet are up. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if that were the case, but he's smoking a cigar. All right. That's kind of, chill if you ask me. So the other thing, other stuff, information I've been able to ascertain from, kind of talking to the players and also keeping an eye out on social media is the return of the ping pong table. Now, the ping pong table was very popular in Pat Shurmur's regime. He kind of made the locker room to feel like, a place where the players can unwind, relax, and so on and so forth. That went away under Joe Judge. Joe Judge got rid of all that and turned it back into a like an office atmosphere, which is kind of the approach Tom Coughlin used to take. And based on an Instagram post that Tate Crowder posted a few weeks back, you could see that the ping pong table was back. So basically, I think what Brian Daboll is trying to do is he's trying to allow for these players to build camaraderie. And what better way to do it than to, have teammates challenge each other to a ping pong game or whatnot, play cards, whatever it is. Now, there's pros and there's cons to that. And the cons obviously are if you're not winning, then that stuff's got to go. You've got to say, okay, look, we're wasting too much time messing around here. We're not working hard enough. Maybe we've got to remove that distraction. If they're winning, hey, more power to them for having sort of like a little bit of a relaxation type of or a recreational type of atmosphere. Me personally, I'm not a fan of that type of atmosphere. I don't like it because, it's work. And I think there are other ways that players can have fun and that they can build camaraderie and whatnot. I don't know that, putting games into the locker room is the way to do it, but that's just my opinion. You might disagree, and that's fine. That's totally fine. But, the players, they just feel that, there's energy. Daboll is very laid back. As I said, that doesn't mean that he's a slacker or he's not taking this seriously or he doesn't recognize the magnitude of what he has taken on. He recognizes all that, but he's also not so wound up to where, he's got players and coaches walking on eggshells. And that, to me, is the biggest difference from what I was able to gather from, my observations and also from what I was hearing from the players. There are other little things, I know a lot of you are going to probably ask me, well, what about the practices? How are the practices different? And there were a few things that were different, and I'll talk about them real quick. One of the things I noticed, and this could be, because it's voluntary and it's still the off season and, the roster isn't set. Guys, the depth charts that you might have read about, don't pay any attention to those folks because those are going to change. But one change that I noticed is that the Giants, they have like this big scoreboard that they got under Joe Judge. It's kind of like, think like a high school scoreboard. And they moved it to closer to the field house. And they had like the clock count down for each practice session. And I think the purpose of that was to help the players, get into a rhythm to know, okay, at this point go here, at this point go there. And it corresponded with the change in the periods in each practice session. So maybe that's what that was all about. Another thing that kind of jumped out at me was the use of music. Now, in the past, the players would get their music choice or whatever that would play during warm-ups. But then what would happen is the music would get turned down when they went into individual drills and then turned off when they went into team drills. With Daboll, music was kept on throughout, with the exception of the 7-on-7 and then the 11-on-11 stuff. That's when they kind of muted it, if you will. But music was still going strong. So maybe, again, to keep guys loose, to keep them relaxed, or maybe, that's just a sign of things to come. I mean, the music to me never bothered me, but, Again, if the team is winning, that's fine. If they're not winning, then you might want to re-examine that. One other thing that I will comment on, and I don't know if this matters any, but I'll just mention it real quick. Post-practice stretching has returned. All right, now, under Joe Judge, again, sometimes he would have the guys run sprints, but a lot of times once practice was over, the guys would gather at the middle of the field into a huddle. The huddle would be broken down by somebody, and then they would go back to the locker room. I saw some post-practice stretching, all right, and I was happy to see that, because when you're running around and engaging in activity, to suddenly stop and not do some stretching, I've heard, I've had trainers tell me that that's really not the way to go. So just little things like that. Now, whether that cuts down on, hamstrings or sore muscles or anything like that, that remains to be seen. But I thought that was interesting as well. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about the practice itself, some of the concepts. I can't go into too much detail because of media rules, but I can talk in generalities. So I will talk a little bit about that. I'll also talk about the main stories. All that's coming up in just a moment. All right, Giant fans, we have more coming up on today's LockedOn Giants podcast. But first, this Mother's Day, give Mom something special she'll treasure forever with fine jewelry from BlueNile.com. LockedOn Sports listeners get $50 off $500. This podcast exclusive is only good through Mother's Day, so make sure you use that code LockedOn at BlueNile.com. No matter what you're looking for, whether it be a ring, an earrings, a necklace, a bracelet, or whatever, Blue Nile has it. And there's always something special, so you're sure to find something to celebrate that special event with that special someone in your life. Every order is insured, ships free, and arrives in discreet packaging that won't give away what is inside. So shop stress-free at BlueNile.com and find your forever piece. Again, that's BlueNile.com, and that promo code is locked on to save $50 off your order of $500 or more. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to the LockedOn Giants podcast. I am Patricia Traina, and I am recapping day 2 of the Giants' voluntary minicamp program, which is going on through today, Thursday. I think that will be the last day. And then the players, I believe next week will be off as the team gets ready for the draft on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So just giving you some general impressions, talking about some of the storylines. Now, I spoke in the last segment, I said I would tell you a little bit about some of the concepts that I saw in offense and defense. Again, I can't get into specifics. And also remember, they didn't really go into the deep installs yet. They're not going to really until they have their roster complete. And that means getting the draft picks in here and whatnot. But there were some basics you could see. And I'm going to start with the defense. Wink Martindale has some very creative looks for pressure packages with his defense. And one of them that I will comment on is the Amoeba Concept. Now, if you're not familiar with what the Amoeba Concept is, basically that's just a group of defensive linemen, like the front 7, kind of standing around, milling around. You don't know who's going to stunt. You don't know who's going to drop back into coverage. You don't know who's going to come and rush the passer. It creates a guessing game for the offense, and it really necessitates the offense studying and reading keys and really paying attention to like body lean and all kinds of stuff. So we saw a few of those. We saw a few different, alignments. Ellerson Smith, who we really didn't get a feel for what kind of player he was last year because of the injury and the limited snaps he got, but he was working as a defensive end with his hand in the ground as well as a stand-up linebacker. So you saw a bunch of guys moving around, and I asked Coach Daboll about position versatility and whatnot, and he said that that's going to come. Ultimately they're going to experiment with moving guys around to different positions to try and get the most out of them. So the days of one guy doing one thing, pretty much you're not going to see that with this coaching staff. They want to get everybody to move around because the more they can do, the better, and the more creative that the coaching staff can be with their game plans. Now, offensively, I saw several different route concept combinations, which were intriguing. Again, I can't go into all of them, but I will comment about Saquon Barkley and his deployment. This staff had him running a wheel route, which I was happy to see because Barkley wins that route every time in practice. And by the way, Barkley looked good. I thought he was running well. He didn't look hesitant. And, he spoke after the practice about how he felt better, how he's been able to train the way he wants to, and just how he's looking forward to having a big year this year, which is a contract year for him. And I know, a lot of you are like, okay, yeah, we've been hearing this every year, so just show me. But, right now I can only tell you what I saw. And what I saw was a very confident Saquon who's really pretty much determined to have the breakout year that he was trying to have in year two, only to lose that due to the, to some injuries. And then, of course, the ACL the following year, which robbed them of almost an entire season. So you saw things like wheel routes, you saw some hooks, some outs, slants, just different combinations. And the best way I can describe it is if you remember what Jason Garrett ran with stick routes, you didn't see a whole lot of, I don't think at any rate, you saw a lot of deep routes and stuff like that. You're seeing more deep routes early on from this particular offense that's being installed by Mike Kafka and Brian Daboll. And by the way, Kafka was calling the plays for the offense. Brian Daboll said that they're going to continue to kind of experiment to see how comfortable Kafka is at doing that. It's a role he's never done before, but Daboll hasn't made a decision as to who's going to call the plays. I think he's going to kind of give Kafka the entire spring and maybe the preseason to see how he does. So that's where that stands right now. But the whole offensive scheme, a lot of different looks that I think once Giant fans, once you see, you're going to say, gosh, where have these been all our, the last several years? Because they do create mismatches. They do create separation for the receivers. I was very, very, excited to see it. And I can't wait to see more. I really can't. I know this is the early part of the install, but I can't wait to see more with this. So it's going to be interesting for sure. Okay, what else can I tell you about the offense? Kenny Galladay seems to really like what he's seen so far. Now, I want to talk a little bit about Kenny Galladay. Last year, as we all know, not a good year for Galladay. Between the injuries, between the lack of production, just a forgettable year for him. But what a difference a year has made. Galladay is rejuvenated. He's committed to making this work. And he's also encouraged because apparently this offensive system has some concepts almost similar to what Buffalo ran up there for Stephon Diggs. And that has Galladay excited. And one of the things I noticed about Galladay was I remember how last year, whenever he came out to speak to the media, the body language by him, shoulders were slumped, he was tense, the tone of his voice, the length of his answers, it just seemed like the life was sucked out of him. And this time around, it was like he had a new person. It was like a new person. There was pep in his step. His answers were a little bit more lengthy. He was excited. He was legitimately excited. He was relaxed. And he was looking forward to learning more and more about this offense. So you can tell that he is, on board with what they're installing. He's excited. And that's half the battle right there. Because look, if a player buys into a system, he's going to embrace it. He's going to make it his own. And he's going to excel in it. And I think Kenny Galladay for the money that's invested in him, my hope is that we will see the best of Kenny Galladay this year. If he stays healthy, I think we will see a much different Kenny Galladay than we saw last year. And I think people will be generally pleased overall. All right, Giant fans, we've got more coming up on today's LockedOn Giants podcast. But first, BetOnline.net is the only place that offers the best information on the latest odds, contests, and player props for all your sports betting needs. No matter what sport you're into, BetOnline has you covered. Plus, they offer everything you need to know for live betting and your favorite Vegas casino games. Head on over to BetOnline.net today to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to the LockedOn Giants podcast. I am Patricia Traina, and we're recapping the main storylines from Wednesday. And by the way, I'm not going to cover Joe Shane and what he had to say on this particular show, but I will have coverage of that over on Giants Country. And depending on what I end up doing for tomorrow's show, I might talk about that a little bit, give you some interpretations. I basically need to digest that a little bit more. Just kind of a crazy day on Wednesday when I tape this. Plus, don't tell anybody, but I snuck away for a couple of hours. It was my birthday after all. And I worked on my birthday, not complaining, but, look, even I'm entitled to enjoy a couple of hours of my birthday, right? So anyway, I want to talk now about the Kadarius Toney situation. Kadarius Toney, one of several players who did not show up for the program. Voluntary, by the way. I want to stress that word again. But there was a media report that several guys didn't show up. But Toney is the only guy, from what I can gather, who has not put in an appearance at all at the off-season conditioning program. And as a result, he has not gotten his playbook. Now, look, here's the thing. I know it's voluntary. I know Toney has a right to say, okay, look, I got other stuff going on that I need to attend to, so I can't be there. Now, me speaking, this is just me talking. If it were my job and I were being paid millions of dollars, whatever else I had going on, unless it was, a sick family member or the birth of a child or some kind of life-changing event, I'd put on hold whatever I had going on and I would get my butt into work, even if it was voluntary. But that's me. I'm a little older than Kadarius Toney. Maybe, and I'd like to think maybe, a little bit more in touch with stuff. But anyway, whatever Kadarius Toney has going on, obviously it's a personal decision. I did try to reach his agent to kind of get a statement, even if it was just, he's got stuff going on, but he doesn't intend to be there for the OTAs or something. But unfortunately, the agent was traveling, and I didn't hear back from him by the time I had to, tape this podcast. But here's the thing, folks. Yes, it's voluntary. Yes, it's early. And I know some of you are going to say, well, who cares if he's not there? As long as he comes in and he balls out, is anybody going to really care? Probably not. But it's the optics of the situation. All right? Kadarius Toney is coming off of a rough rookie season. Not all of it was his fault, okay? He didn't ask to get COVID twice. He didn't ask to get injured. The performance, was he deployed correctly? You can argue that he was or he wasn't. It doesn't matter. But, you can't keep making all excuses for him. At some point, Toney needs to take accountability for how his season went. All right? And to not come in, at least to get your playbook, so you could start studying, even if you just, pop in, pick the darn thing up, sit through a meeting or two, and start learning stuff. This is going to be a brand new offense with different concepts, different route concepts. And while people say, well, no big deal, a receiver can pick this stuff up later, it's nice to know, to kind of get in from the bottom, the ground floor up. What is the reasoning behind the concept? How does, the route that you're being asked to run work off the route that, say, the running back is being asked to run? So these are little nuances that I think if a player fully understands, they can perform better. and the offense can click quicker. And, again, this could be temporary. I mean, we don't know. Maybe Tony's going to show up tomorrow. Maybe he shows up, when the team reconvenes after the draft. I don't know. But the optics, folks, is not very good. I mean, let's call it for what it is. The optics are not very good. I hope whatever he's got going on, it's nothing serious. But again, this is your job, and I know, again, you're not, it's voluntary, but it's your job. Why wouldn't you want to come in? Why wouldn't you want to build camaraderie with your teammates? Get to know your coaches, how they think. Get a head start. I mean, that's what this program is there for. You don't have to be there every day, but at least come in and make a cameo. And to my knowledge, Kadarius Toney hasn't done it. I'm really trying here. I think you can tell I'm struggling here with this. I'm trying not to judge the kid. I really don't mean to judge him. But to say that I'm not disappointed, I'm not going to lie. I'm baffled by the decision. And I hope that, come the OTAs, he's there every day. And we can look back on this and laugh at how, silly I looked being concerned. So we'll see. I mean, it was a big story, obviously, today amongst the media. And, look, when you're trying to build a team from the ashes of a 4-win season, the last thing you need is any kind of controversy or distractions or anything like that. And quite honestly, every player, I think, was asked about Toney not being there, which, the media, that's the media doing their job. Don't get me wrong, but, you don't want that to be a distraction, because they spoke about the energy and the camaraderie and how everything was all hunky-dory. And now you throw this into the mix. And, a lot of guys were just kind of dismissive about it. They were like, well, that's his choice and whatnot. But you don't want this to have to build up where now every time the media comes in, it becomes a question of, where's Toney? What do you know about Toney? No, it's not about Toney. It's about the Giants. And that's what it should be. And when the story becomes about one guy and what he's doing or what he's not doing, that to me can be a potential problem that maybe the coaching staff wants to keep an eye on and try to keep from blowing up into a full-scale type of situation. So, all right, Giant fans, that is going to do it for this edition of the LockedOn Giants podcast. A couple quick notes before I say goodbye. You can check out more coverage of the minicamp at giantscountry.com. You can check out some still shots as well as some videos that I shot from the practice. I have that over on my Instagram account at Patty Traina, PattiTraina. And I'm going to be putting stuff up throughout the day on Thursday. So check back frequently. I'll have Instagram stories. Also, tentatively plan, I'm going to do a Twitter Spaces thing, my very first Twitter space. So I think I'm going to do something like that probably at some point on Thursday. So keep an eye out on my Twitter account, and I'll give you guys enough heads up as to what time I'm going to do that. But it'll be an opportunity for you to ask questions as we go along. So yeah, it should be fun. So as always, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day, or if watching on YouTube, your first watch of the day. And we will see you tomorrow.